Will y'all please pray with me? God, may the words of my heart and the meditations of each of our hearts be with you, for you are our rock and our redeemer. Amen. This is my second time preaching at CTK, and I think I'm a little bit more nervous this time because earlier I was too sleepy to feel my nerves, but now I'm just nervous. So hopefully this will be good. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So today, as Pastor Daniel said, is Bold Women Sunday, a day created by the ELCA to recognize women's contributions to Christianity as well as to the larger church. Today at CTK, we are celebrating the lives and stories of women and putting them at the front. We women who often get left out of the telling of the great story of God and the church. I sometimes struggle with events like this one where we lump all women together, even in an attempt to honor women. Not all women experience the same degree or type of disregard or discrimination or erasure. Many women have differing experiences, often as a result of their race or class in combination with their gender. Occasions that honor and set apart women are often created for white women who feel they are not heard or recognized on other occasions. But in my experience, oftentimes white women's voices and experiences are recognized, even centered, while the experiences of Black and other marginalized women are pushed to the back, not seen, washed over, and deemed unimportant. I'm sure y'all have heard about intersectionality, the ways that in marginalized people, identities intersect one another, piling on further marginalization. So for me, being a Black woman, I don't often have the luxury of solely identifying as a woman, but have to put my experience as a Black person first and my female experiences second. Today, while I'll mostly be preaching in binaries of women and men, know that when I say women, I am not only preaching about cis women, I am also preaching about trans women and non-binary people who are marginalized. As we look at the history and current day reality of this church, we see reflected in it the reality painted for us throughout the Bible. Male stories written by men, starring men, and oftentimes only healthy and sustainable for men. As Pastor Athena and I picked a passage for this Sunday, we veered from the lectionary, the cycle of pre-chosen texts, in order to find a story featuring and centered on a woman, as there are very few stories in the lectionary that center women. The text that we gather around today is the Old Testament text, Joshua 2. It is actually mostly about a woman. In this story, we meet Rahab, another person with marginalized, intersecting identities of woman, Canaanite, and prostitute. A woman who finds God in another people's story, but then is met by God in her own story. Joshua 2 begins with Hebrew spies entering Canaan, ordered to survey the land as they prepare to invade it. After they enter the land, they stop at Rahab's house. Rahab soon realizes they are spies, as she knows the Israelites plan to wage war on the Canaanites. She also knows that they will claim their land, as she believes the Lord, who dried up the Red Sea while they escaped enslavement in Egypt, has given it to the Israelites. She has heard stories about their God. Rahab hides the spies on her roof and goes on to make a pact with them that when they return, they will protect her. They will also protect her family. They agree, telling her to gather her family into her house and to hang a red cord from her window as a sign to the armies to spare their lives. Historians debate over what Rahab's home was. Some say it was a brothel, others say a tavern. In either case, we know why the spies stopped there. And also, this place, Rahab's house, was a place that gathered community. In this way, Rahab's home was a place of hospitality. I don't know how much time you good people of C2K and Cary, North Carolina, have spent in taverns and bars, but I have spent a number of nights there. In my 20s, bars like CJ's and Kryptonite in Rockford, Illinois, were places of kinship and belonging for me. I saw how bars can be centers of community. Many of us have seen the show Cheers, right? A place where everybody knows your name. These bars are homes for the wayward people where these people might not fit in other places, come together and find a place of belonging, entering into a type of family, a place of comfort. Rahab not only provided comfort to her community through hospitality, but also she, like many women, gave her body to comfort others, to protect others. It's important to think of Rahab in this way because while on one hand it can be said that Rahab betrayed her whole community and her country, on the other hand, she protected her close community, her family, and her loved ones. When Rahab realizes these men are spies, she puts herself forward, asking that they protect she and her family. Even though these men came to murder her, she boldly steps out, using the power she has to hide them in order to gain a promise of protection from them. In this way, Rahab is similar to many women. In numerous cultures, especially those of marginalized people around the world, women are the ones who use their bodies to protect their families and their communities. I think about the women who, following the murder of George Floyd, stood at the front of the picket lines, putting their bodies forward to protect the people behind them. I think about the women who right now in Ukraine are using their bodies to protect their children and families from bombings. This is what women do to protect those they love. This is the boldness of women using their bodies for protection, bravely stepping out, even in fear, against someone who threatens their safety, holding together their community and hospitality and comfort. While today is Bold Women's Sunday, it is also Transfiguration Sunday. While women are not named in the Transfiguration story, I think women are written all over it. It's a story of hospitality as the disciples want to build tents for Moses, Elijah, and Jesus on the mountaintop. It's a story of this lineage of prophets coming together in community. And it's a story of beauty and of sparkling. While Jesus is praying, his face is transfigured, which doesn't just mean to change like being transformed, but it also means to become beautiful. Jesus' face goes from being however it looked before to sparkling and becoming more beautiful. I like to think of Jesus' face not being filled with light, but instead being filled with rhinestones or sequins or glitter. The face of Jesus being transformed into something shimmering, iridescent, and perhaps even femme. This face of God in human form was transformed by God into something more lovely, something even more divine. And I don't think it was just because God put makeup on him. I think it was that while the disciples looked at Jesus' face, they began to see what was going on inside of Jesus' body, reflected outward. No longer did they just see their leader and friend, but instead they saw his character, who he truly was, the beauty that was in his heart being lived out through his life, his teachings, and his example. When Pastor Athena and I first picked this passage, we did so because we wanted to feature the story of a woman who lived courageously holding out hope for deliverance from God. However, as I read through this passage in the last few days, I read it through the lens of the war on Ukraine, through the lens of a history of people with bigger armies and large economies invading another land in hopes of taking it as their own, in hopes of destroying the lives of the people already living there. In this light, the war the Israelites waged on the Canaanites feels incredibly devastating. For centuries, humans have used God as a reason, or more appropriately, an excuse, to wage war on another people and other people. But that's not the God I know. And I believe that's not the God that Rahab saw. Rahab saw a glimpse of the heart of God, the God who shone through the face of Jesus. While Rahab spoke of the power of God, I think she actually saw the beauty of God. I'm going to repeat that. While Rahab spoke of the power of God, I think what she actually saw was the beauty of God. She knew that this God was someone that she should pay attention to. I don't think that Rahab decided to side with the Hebrew spies or to trust these infiltrators would spare her family because she knew their God was powerful. I think it was because she knew their God was beautiful, that their God was merciful. And this God, who transfigured the face of Jesus, transfigured the life of Rahab, bringing her story, her life, her future into the ongoing story of God, making her a pivotal player in the future life of God's Son. The book of Joshua is not the final time we hear of Rahab in the story of God. She is brought back into the picture years later in the book of Matthew, where we learn that through her body came the bodies of generations that later led to the life of Joseph, the father of Jesus. Just as Rahab hung her red cord in her window as a sign of her hope in this God who would deliver her, we too can hope that this God will deliver us. Will deliver us from all the atrocities we learned of this week going on here in the United States and around the world. Will deliver the people of Ukraine. Will deliver trans kids who are being persecuted in Texas. Will deliver the family of Daunte Wright as his murder is deemed manslaughter and the perpetrator given a very light sentence. Like Rahab, we do not just hope for safety for those people and for us, we also hope for new life, the resurrecting life found in our holy God. This God is for people with marginalized, intersecting identities. This God is for people often written out of history. This God is for people who are often the victims of violence and oppression. This God is for people whose bodies are often used as barricades, as comforters, and for those who choose to see their bodies as whole and beautiful. That was true in the days of Rahab, and it is true today in 2022. And we know that this God, whose heart is merciful, brings us into community, inviting us into God's story, and holds us in beauty and in love in this moment and always. Amen.